Are Manchester United working on Ruben Amorim's replacement following a shocking end to 2025? More updates with Yan Diomande, who could be cheaper than first reported, and all the latest Manchester United news and transfer updates, keeping you right up to date with everything. I'm Jamie. Welcome to Man United Review. Let's jump straight into it. So firstly, we've got to talk about last night. So get involved in the comments first and foremost. Give us your thoughts and your feelings on that. It was, that was as bad as it's been for a very, very long time. It really bothered me, that performance and the result last night as well. And not just the result, the performance. And I've just come away from that genuinely confused, I think, about the decisions being made. And let me be clear first, right? The senior players deserve criticism. That performance was not good enough. No intensity, no urgency, too many players not stepping up. And if it wasn't for Sen Lemons, we could have easily lost at home to a Wolves side that came here with just 2 points, and that is unacceptable. So I do not want to take any of the blame away from the players, because ultimately they're the ones on the pitch that have got a duty of responsibility for their own performances, and there were far too many players, senior players anyway. I'm not having to go at the kids because they're kids. I've got nothing to say against like Fletcher and Mantato and everything like that. They're devoid of all of that, in my opinion, because they're being thrown, they're like a lamb to the wolves at the moment, being thrown into that situation. But the senior players need to face the music when it comes to that. It was unacceptable, I felt, from a majority of our senior pros. But then I also think the manager has to take the responsibility. And what worried me the most was, hearing Ruben Amorim after the game that Wolves play with a back five. So basically we set up to combat that. And for me, that is a massive red flag. This is a Wolves team that we beat 4-1 not too long ago, a team at the bottom of the table, and we're more focused on stopping them than imposing ourselves. But then he also said in the same press conference that he had to take Xerxes off at half-time to bring Fletcher on to stop them being overloaded in the midfield. So in one breath, he's saying, well, we know how they're going to play, and we're going to play five, and they played five at the back. So we played five at the back to combat that. But then also in the same press conference saying, well, they overloaded the midfield, so I had to make a change at halftime as well. Just full of contradictions, and the other thing is, why are we more focused on stopping Wolves and imposing ourselves on them when we're playing at home against one of, if not the worst team in Premier League history? I just don't see. It's just confusing to me, especially when we started to see, a bit of progress against Villa, Bournemouth, Newcastle. The system had changed, and we'd gone to like a back four, and it was working. Okay, Newcastle maybe the exception to the rule, but even then, in the first half, it was a fairly even game. Newcastle still had spells, but we had moments as well. And I felt that it was working. Dorgu was Premier League Player of the Week this week because I'm playing off as a right winger. And it just felt like, the performances had improved and there was something to build on from there. And then you go straight to a back five at home to Wolves, and that's where the confusion sets in for me. Like what on earth? It's like we took one step forward and one step backwards, and it was, baffling. Especially when Ruben Amorim says before the game, that he doesn't have the players to play the system and that a change is coming and all of that. In fact, here are his comments before the game. When I came here last season, I understood that maybe I don't have the players to play well in that system, but it was a beginning of the process. We are trying to find an identity. Today is a different moment. We don't have a lot of players. We need to adapt. But they already know that. So so that was his pre-match press conference where he was alluding to changing the system and the reason he couldn't do it before and stuff. And then what does he do? Reverts back to type and goes with the 3-4-3, which effectively is a back five. Whenever you play this system and you've got two full-backs pretending to be wing-backs, it's a back five by default. So I don't understand why in some breaths he's saying, well, we need a change, we need to adapt, and it's been, looking okay. All right, we've still had mixed results, but teething problems, but there's been some better performances I felt in those games, and then we just literally shit the bed, reverted back to a back five against a Wolves team that were there that should be there for the taking, and I just don't understand the decision to do that, Then the manager talks about, lack of fluidity, but how can there be fluidity when players are being asked to play different roles every single week. Like Aiden Heaven in the last few games, right, done well. This isn't a criticism about Aiden Heaven, by the way, but just to give you an example, was played in the centre of a back three, on the right of a back two, and now on the right of a back three again in the last few games. You've got Dorgu that, was arguably our man of the match. A toss up, I think, between him and Heaven against Newcastle. Done really well. Had his best game for us anyway. I think we can all agree on that, playing at right wing, and then reverts back to left wing back. Like, it just creates so much confusion around the place. Like, how can you say, well, we've not got any fluidity when you're constantly moving players around all the time and playing them in different positions from week to week, so they don't even have the opportunity, even with AFCON and injuries and stuff, to create any fluidity with the players that we do have available when you're constantly shifting them around. Like, it just makes no sense to me. Like, Cunha's playing on that left, and he was playing like left in the 4-2-3-1 against Newcastle with Luke Shaw. Now he's playing as the inside 10 with Dorgu that side again. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just I felt that it just created so much confusion unnecessarily as well when we have seen progress and we took a step back. So I think that you can't blame the fluidity when the structure keeps changing all the time. And then on top of that, the game management, didn't impact the match at all. Like for like substitutions again. No change of shape, no risk taking. We didn't try to, I don't think, win that game. When you're subbing Euro for Heaven, it's a like for like sort of substitution. I didn't think that, and it's a pattern with Ruben Amorim that as well. Everton, West Ham, even Newcastle, the substitutions were baffling. Although it worked effectively because we held on and managed to get the 1-0 win, but I was still scratching my head at all the substitutions he was making, thinking, is he actually trying to throw away this game? But we got away with it, and there's no, there's no risk taking. Like, there's no, and I'm not saying this would have worked or anything like that, but you've got two forwards on the bench. You've got Chido-Obi, who does have some Premier League experience now, albeit he wasn't, his best when he played at the end of last season, but has made Premier League starts and had Premier League minutes. Could he not have done a job at the end? Could we not have thrown the kitchen sink? Could we not have put Shea Lacey on just to create a bit of panic and create a bit of confusion for that last 10 minutes rather than just the same old, same old? Well, that's not working. So I'll tell you what, I'll just swap the players around and still play them in a shape that doesn't work. Like, it's just really confusing to me. And that's why I'm just generally confused right now. Are we changing the system? Because he's been banging on about it in his press conferences for weeks, saying time to change. And, we've got AFCON and we need to adapt and all that. And then what do? Revert back to type. Why? In Amorim's word, because Wolves play with a back five. That is the reason why. And he said it in his pre-match press conference on why switch into a 3-4-2-1. He said, I knew that they Wolves play with a back five. They used the width and today just to do that. And then something building up with Patrick Dorgu or close to Luke Shaw. So effectively, he did say himself in the post-match press conference that, Wolves play with a back five. So to combat that, we played with a back five. Like, just genuinely baffled by that. So are we now adapting to the opponents week in and week out? Are we just covering for injuries, covering for AFCON? Because it just all of a sudden feels very unclear to me at the moment what direction we're going under Amorim. And I don't think he knows himself, which I don't think is helping the situation. It feels like, he's not sure whether to stick or twist. And for me, you don't need to abandon your principles, right? It's about recognizing when something isn't working and then having the bravery to adjust. When changing the system and he's already done the hard part by changing the system himself. Like, we've seen it, we've watched it, him changing to the back four, and then it was like, well, I'm just going to revert back, and that just feels to me like self-sabotage. And that's why I'm just genuinely, I'm obviously frustrated, angry, pissed off, but more so just confused with what's going on at the moment. And that performance last night just added more to my confusion. And I'm not saying that Amorim should be sacked. I'm not saying he's the wrong man, but right now I'm not convinced either way. And that uncertainty, is a concern because I can't shake the feeling, and this is just me being honest here, I can't shake the feeling that would we be better, would we have more points if we had better game management from the manager? And I think that we do, because there was a pattern emerging from games when we're 1-0 up or we're leading that we just throw away leads, and it's not all down to the players, I don't think. I think there's a lack of imagination and a lack of in-game management that's affecting games, and I can't help but shake that feeling, as I said, that we could be higher up in the league if we had better in-game management coming from the manager. and we'd have more points on the board. But let me know where you're at. I'd really, really want to know your thoughts and feelings today. Where are you at? Get involved in the comments. Let me know. And let's run through the latest news. And I'm not the only one actually that was a little bit confused with, with what was going on. Specifically last night, Laurie Whitwell said taking off Xerxes at halftime for tactical reason is quite astounding. United needed more players in the box to unsettle Wolves. Look at how Dorgu's disallowed goal came. That subbed, plus reverting to back three. Big questions for Amorim, and I agree with what Laurie Whitwell had to say after the game. Gary Neville's probably given the most sort of scathing criticism, I think, of Ruben Amorim that I've seen. So he said that on the substitutions, firstly, the changes actually made Man United worse. Every single one of them was strange. If Xerxes wasn't injured and that was a tactical decision, then it was a really poor one. Xerxes may not be Cantona, but the team needed his strength, presence, and experience, especially after scoring. He should have stayed on, so I really hope he was taken off because of an injury rather than a tactical call from Amorim. And Amorim himself has confirmed that that was a tactical decision to bring Fletcher on, because we were being overloaded in the midfield, apparently. And while Xerxes, didn't have the best game, got the goal, it was a lucky goal, it was a deflected goal, but he was having a very, very poor game. But I kind of see where Gary Neville's coming from, because, he's a senior forward. I just can't help but think, why did you play him in the right 10? Like, again, another square peg in a round hole, which just is creating confusion at the moment. But let me know what you think regarding that. And then Gary Neville on the overall sort of performance said that on Ruben Amorim, said that he doesn't need to say, I haven't changed the system because of the media, because that would amount to saying that the media occupy his thoughts. If he had to change, it's because the performances with the 3-4-3 were very poor and the results were catastrophic. When I see that we were going going back to three defenders after 5 minutes tonight, I said to myself, no, Ruben, why did you do that? The manager has to look at that and say to himself, I was wrong. I complicated things. And I find it hard to disagree with Gary Neville at the moment with what he said there. I think that particular decision, because you could have lined up two ways. When I saw the team, I was like, to speak to my brother-in-law before the game, I was like, well, he's either going back to a 3-4-3 because you can play the same players in that position, and that's obviously what we did, or you could play a 4-2-3-1 with Shaw, Martinez, Heaven, Dalot as your back four, Casemiro, Ugarte midfield, and then Dorgu on the right, Xerxes as the 10, Cunha as left wing, and then Sesko up front. And who knows whether that would have made a difference or not. I mean, it's still on the players, though, and this goes back to my first point when I did say it's still on the players, though, to actually perform. But would it have made a difference? I don't know. You tell me in the comments below. But overall, just a really, really bad end to 2025, wasn't it? Really, really annoying, especially because of the caliber of opposition. And the fact is, they probably could have won that game as well had it not been for Saint Le Mans. I thought that they created a higher XG than us as well, and that's just really, really embarrassing all around. I really felt it was a bad all around. And like I said, I'm genuinely confused with what's going on at the moment, specifically after that. But yeah, I'm sure you're gonna tell me what you think regarding that. So we ended 2025 with 13 wins, 11 draws, and 14 losses. So we have statistically lost more games in 2025 than we have won. Had we won last night, it would have it would have tipped the balance slightly. But that's absolutely worrying. And even more worrying as well as our recent home form. So West Ham came to Old Trafford with no wins in 8. Bournemouth came with no wins in 10. And Wolves no wins in 15. Manchester United played all of them at home in that run, and have beaten none of them this season. So the three, and then, you add in Everton, were down to 10 men as well amongst those sort of performances, and it is not good. It is not a good record, and rightly so. In my opinion, there were some very, very clear, audible boos at halftime. There were chants for attack all throughout the second half yesterday, and very audible boos from the Old Trafford crowd at the end of the game as well, which apparently continued when the players did a little bit of a lap of honour at the end of the game as well. So, not good. It's not a happy place to be at the moment, is it, as a United fan? But that does raise obviously questions around the manager. And there's been a report come out from Court Offside saying that Ruben Amorim's reign at Manchester United has entered turbulent territory as 2025 draws to a close, with optimism around his appointment rapidly giving way to uncertainty and frustration. What was initially billed as a bold tactical reset has begun to unravel, and the warning signs were impossible to ignore following a disappointing 1-1 draw against rock bottom of the table Wolves. At Old Trafford, the result has intensified scrutiny on Amorim's methods, particularly his unwavering commitment to his 3-4-3. Let me know if you agree with that part. It says, internally, Amorim was backed strongly by Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos's leadership group, who were keen to allow time for a long-term rebuild. However, United's continued struggles, lack of cutting edge in the final third, and growing distance from the Champions League places have shaken that patience. Sources close to the agents industry have informed Court Offside that the Red Devils have now begun working on plans to possibly replace Amorim at Old Trafford. I'm not going to go through the next, but the first name on the list, Oliver Glasner, who I believe is not committed to a new contract at Crystal Palace and maybe out of contract in the summer as well. But you can see, look at the difference in win percentages. Oliver Glasner, 50% win percentage at Crystal Palace. Ruben Amorim has managed a 34% win percentage at Manchester United in terms of wins. Glasner's got 8 more wins. Amorim's got 3 more draws and 3 more losses than Oliver Glasner in 47 and 48 games respectively. So there's the first name. The other two, not going to go through too much on there, as well as Xavi and Andoli Areola from Bournemouth as well, although he's having a bit of a mixed bag at the moment as well. But that is coming from Court Offside, and Court Offside do have some, decent journalists working for them, some not so decent ones, and I would say let's take that one with a pinch of salt for now. It feels a little bit like recency bias, that where they're just jumping on, playing to people's emotions, because I think a lot of United fans are going to be emotional today. I'm emotional. I don't know where I'm at. I'm angry still. I'm disappointed. I'm embarrassed and confused, as I mentioned earlier as well. Like, it's just generally so yeah, we'll take that story with a pinch of salt for now, but get involved in the comments. Let me know what you think regarding that. And let's go through the transfer news. So obviously we had news yesterday from Fabrizio Romano saying that United, with the offer that's on the table from Joshua Zirkzee from Roma, that United have now started exploring the forward market, whether that's going to be another striker or a winger or whatever. We don't know at this particular stage, and we don't know how serious we are going to be looking at forwards in potentially anyway in January. One name that has been doing the rounds though recently is Diomande, and there's been a couple of more reports regarding his situation. So firstly, this is coming from The Athletic, saying that RB Leipzig's position with Yan Diomande as of a few weeks ago is that he is not for sale in January, and that the conversations would start at 100 million euros next summer. Things can always change, but that's been the plan since Yan Diomande arrived in Germany last summer. The club see him quite understandably as one of the biggest prospects they've had in years. So The Athletic is suggesting still 100 million euros for Yan Diomande. Unlikely to be for January, but does say that things can always change. So if they did get like an offer on the table, maybe they would consider something there. Sky Sports, though, have said that Manchester United are one of the clubs monitoring RB Leipzig winger Yan Diomande. United are not assured to pursue another winger after appearing to miss out on Antoine Semenyo to Man City, but United may accelerate their interest in Diomande if other clubs start moving for the highly rated young forward in this window. There are other big clubs keen on Diomande. The 19-year-old Ivory Coast international, who's currently at AFCON with Amad Diallo. So Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain are also thought to be tracking his development closely. There have been reports Leipzig value him at £87 million, but Sky Sports News understands that is not accurate, with the player's value understood to be more in the region of 52 to 61, so 60 to 70 million euros. So effectively what Sky is saying is that, look, we are monitoring Yan Diomande. There could be some movement in January if Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain or another club come in for a bid, but interestingly suggesting that his valuation is between 60 to 70 million euros, so 52 to 61 million pounds. Now we know that Semenyo's value is 65 million pounds and we were in for that deal. So that would suggest if you can get him at a lower price, then that's maybe plausible for January. As unlikely as I think that it is, though, because I can't see. I mean, RB Leipzig are a very notoriously difficult team to negotiate with, and with the fact they sold a Sesko, Simmons, I think they sold a few others in the summer as well. Off of memory, I don't necessarily think they are strapped for cash. So, that gives them a stronger position to do. But if they start getting offers from clubs, maybe they would consider it. And especially if there's going to be a little bit cheaper than the £87 million. So that's a really interesting update. And I'll keep my eye on that and I'll bring you any more developments when and if they come out. Give us your shouts on that in the comments below. Now, this is a strange one. I don't know the credibility of this source. Saw it in the Manchester Evening News saying that Manchester United regret selling Scott McTominay to Napoli and are interested in re-signing the 29-year-old midfielder next summer, according to Transfer Feed. I have no idea what Transfer Feed are, whether they're good, not one that I've heard of. So I'm going to say take with a pinch of salt for now. It's claimed the Scotland international could be tempted to return to the Premier League if Napoli retain the Serie A title. Barcelona are among the others that have been linked. What are fair play to Scott McTominay as well, because they think it's nice to see a player like that had no ill feeling at the club. Do you know what I mean? Was obviously a boy, come through the youth team, actually going away and doing really well for himself. But I can't see United going back for Scott McTominay. But, I've had conversations with friends and family members, and a lot of people have been like, we should have sold Scott McTominay. And there is an argument to say that, but give us your suggestions and your thoughts and feelings on that in the comments below. Would you go back for Scott McTominay and bring him back to the club if you could? Let me know down below. And then the final story I've got for you is regarding Højlund. So Fabrizio Romano said that Napoli will trigger the obligation to buy clause for Rasmus Højlund next summer. It will be €44 million with $6 million in add-ons. This is an important news for Manchester United in terms of getting fresh money to invest next summer. So I think Fabrizio Romano has had the confirmation that Napoli are definitely going to take up the obligation to buy for Rasmus Højlund. And that obviously brings in some money in the summer, which can go towards the midfield rebuild and obviously help us out. And especially with the rules changing as well, where it's not going to be PSR anymore. We're going into the squad ratio rule, is it? I think it's called. That might then give us a little bit more money to go out and spend in the summer, because my God, we need to spend some money to rebuild this squad, don't we? But get involved in the comments. Give us your thoughts and feelings on that in down below, as I'm sure you will. So overall, let me know how you feel about the current state of affairs with United and for the match and the result and the performance last night as well. Like I said, I'm very confused by everything, by where we are and what direction we're going in at the moment under Ruben Amorim. More links with Diomande could be available for cheaper. Keep an eye on that one though for you. And Højlund's definitely going to be going to Napoli in the summer. So get involved in the comments on all of those. Don't forget to smash a like on the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. See you in the next one.